Now this feathery thing is actually a phylogenetic tree consisting of hundreds of sequences. The first view of the global sequences as per GISAID, and these red arrows indicate the first two SARS-CoV strains that came into India, which was identified here in the National Institute of Virology. You can see the two coming in here. This was in the first week of March, and by the second week of March, you can see this feathery thing looking more dense. It just means a lot more sequences have been developed. It's almost doubled here, and again you can see our two sequences, the first two Indian sequences that came out of Wuhan, highlighted here. Subsequent early introductions into the country, the first two are from China. The first was an L and then an S clade. You know, there were medical students in Wuhan. And then you have Italian strains coming from Italy, either via Italian tourists or Indian nationals returning from visits to Italy. These were early introductions. They were mainly G clades. And from Iran, we had a number of Indian pilgrims, students, people working in Iran that were brought back to India, and they introduced another clade early in the month of, in the second week of March, after the introduction of the Italian strains and of course the initial Wuhan strains. And this shows how different clades have come in from different parts of the world. If you look at clade O, mainly from China, Europe, Southeast Asia, and Middle East, this is how different clades came into India. G and GH, mainly from Europe, Middle East, and Africa. The subsequent subclade GR came from, again, Europe, Middle East, and the Far East. Now, if you look at sequences that have been submitted to the GISAID or the Nextstrain or Pangolin databases, the areas colored in green refer to states where sequences have been submitted. Red indicates no sequencing data available. And the leading states that have submitted the maximum number of sequences have actually been Telangana, Gujarat, and Maharashtra. Now you can see in India also, initial strains were mainly the L and the S, which corresponds to the early introductions from Wuhan. And then you see, yes, we have some O, we have some, continue to see some S, we see a bit of V there, and now you can see this whole place getting almost flooded out. About 82%, 85% is G and a little of O there. This is again, if you look at state-wise, you can see that if you look overall, there is that drift towards shades of blue, which are really the G clade and subclades of G, which is GH and GR. Maharashtra, I think, has the maximum number of sequences now, and it is fully G. This is called a sunburst diagram showing the proportion, which you can see in actual percentage. The inner circle is the G, the GH, and GR. You can see it is hogging most of the representation, followed by O and a little of S and a little of L here. And you can see the outer ring corresponds to the pangolin classification. And you can see these are all the sub-clades within a major clade. So B.6, B.4 are big and important subclades which, have significance. I'll come to that. So if you see again the states being represented here, and you can, I draw your attention to this clade O, B.6, clade O, B.6, and so on here. This actually refers to the movement of pilgrims from the Tablighi meeting. So, so much of our genetic variability has been related to the movement of populations. Likewise, if you look at migrations, you can map the movement of strains into different states with migration of laborers. This particularly refers to the movement of pilgrims from the Tablighi meeting in Delhi after which pilgrims went to their different states. So what is the significance of all these mutations? Today, globally, there are at least more than 12,000 point mutations, or what one would call single nucleotide polymorphisms. That means at a single nucleotide, A is replaced by a G or something like that. So there are more than 12,000 known today. Despite this virus being an RNA virus, it has better proofreading properties in its RNA polymerase. So its variations or its genetic heterogeneity, so to say, is actually only half of influenza and 1/4 of HIV. Any two strains collected anywhere in the world differ on average by just 10 nucleotides. It could be different combinations, but you can see the hype about the variability of SARS-CoV-2 is, I think, even the original scientists who have spoken about it have softly retracted their stand. Many mutations have currently no consequence or have capacity to spread or cause disease. Now I come to the mutation that most of you have heard about. In the spike protein, there is a D614G. I'll show you that exactly what is happening in terms of nucleotides in a little while. Basically, aspartate becomes glycine. The amino acid aspartate becomes glycine. That's all that happens, one amino acid change. But this is found in the G clade and its subclades, G, GH, GR. So now I showed you India is almost fully blue. So most of India has this D614G mutation. There's another mutation that has been published out of Singapore. It doesn't seem to have gotten to other parts of the world. A deletion of a 382 nucleotide in the ORF region, which is one of those accessory genes which I didn't particularly highlight for you. It's found on the 3' end of the genome. And this deletion has led to a milder form of COVID-19. Now, what does this D614G do? It probably enhances the AC2 binding and fusion. It increases infectivity of the virus when it comes across host cells. All G, GH, GR clades and subclades have this mutation. It does cause slightly higher virus loads in the upper respiratory tract. And what it actually does is, because of this mutation, there is a more open orientation of the monomers of the spike protein, making it like a, like an opening bud, a bud opening like a flower, before the bud becomes a flower, the opening out of a bud. So it actually creates a more open orientation, which allows better binding and better fusion to the host cell membrane. Definitely better fusion. So if I were to show this to you, just the variation of this nucleotide here, this is the D variant, this is the G variant. This codes for aspartate. With this change of nucleotide, this triplet codon becomes glycine. So this single nucleotide change has changed one amino acid from aspartate to glycine, and that is reflected because of this variant being expressed on the spike protein. You can see this looks somewhat closed. You can see some of the monomers opening out. And this more open configuration helps better binding and fusion. And obviously, as more of it opens out, there's better fusion. Now, if I were to show you at the structural level, this is the subunits 1 of the spike protein, subunit 2. 1 is blue, 2 is yellow, and actually there is this interprotomer latch here that you see. It's a hydrogen bond, and this is the aspartate amino acid. This has become glycine here in the mutant. What happens is there is a weakening of this interprotomer latch when it becomes glycine. This widens. Can you see this gap? It's widening. It's almost like there's an unlocking of a latch. And at the structural level, that is what's happening to give this more open configuration, like a bud slowly opening out into a flower. Now, what impact does it have? The good news is there's no clinical differences in patients infected with the D or G variant. The mutant does not interfere with binding of neutralizing antibodies in the receptor binding domain of the spike protein. Evolutionary biologists have actually created at least 4,000 mutated versions of the receptor binding domain, and no impact has been seen with its binding to the AC2. So these were, created mutations, and this didn't seem to impact on RBD's binding to AC2. And currently, a single vaccine candidate would be efficacious against all circulating lineages. That is what, at the present day and time, looking at the range and even the D614G mutation, this does not impact on a potential benefit that we can get from a vaccine. Here in National Institute of Virology, we have been involved with the making of the BBIL inactivated whole virion vaccine. So we gave them the virus, they made the vaccine, and after phase 1 trials, when they gave us back the samples to do neutralizing antibodies, we checked those antibodies in phase 1 trial patients against the G-clade. The vaccine is made using the G-clade. We also checked it against the O-clades that came out from Iran, and the binding has been very, very comparable. So that we have seen on in this institute as well. And this is what has been said by experts today. So as we see the variants today, I think a good vaccine, even a single good vaccine candidate, will not be affected by the current spread of mutations you see in this region.